Is there an act of forgiveness that's necessary in order to step into the new story? For all the wrong that's been done, for all the lies that have been told.
One of the main pillars of the old story, the narratives, the mythology that have defined the human story, the human world, is the cycle of vengeance. It's the categorizing of the world into the good guys and the bad guys, and the idea that good will triumph when the good guys defeat the bad guys. Well, forgiveness is a release of that story. It's holding something higher than getting revenge or being proven right or seeing your enemies suffer. I mean, even on a really subtle level, this desire that those who you judge, maybe with very good reason, as horrible, wrong people, that they suffer. This secret glee when they're getting their just desserts. That stance feeds the cycle. And this happens in personal relationships too. At some point, you have to decide, am I going to be right or am I going to be happy? Am I going to uphold victory over my opponent or healing?
Peace, family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Brothers and sisters, no man enters into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. With that, I want to welcome our guest today, Mr. Charles Eisenstein. Welcome, my brother. Good to see you again. Is there any truth to that? Are you no longer the same man from the last time that we spoke?
Undoubtedly, I'm not the same man.
Yeah.
I don't know if the pace of change has accelerated or if it's always been this way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a quote from the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, and I would imagine that in writing that quote, it's been the same ever since. That water keeps moving, the change is constant. It's the only constant in this experience that we have is change. And I'm just curious, you're checking in here today from Costa Rica. What is new and alive within your world?
Well, in many people's worlds right now, as I referred to, the pace of change seems to be accelerating. A lot of breakdown, dissolving of old certainties, and people keep asking me to make sense of things, which I've hesitated to do a little bit, because I haven't really made sense of things. And I don't want to jump too quickly into the old frameworks of understanding, the old stories. That it's tempting to do that, to pretend that I understand. But I sense at this moment it's necessary to let go of what we thought we knew and to really be open to a genuinely new story emerging. So I've been practicing that myself. Although I do feel like some things are coming together now, and I've been doing a little bit of writing, but still quite in the in-between zone.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a mechanism within that letting go of the old story. Is forgiveness necessary? Are reparations necessary? I'm checking in today at a time where Congresswoman Paulina Luna, she just announced that the JFK files are being opened up, the MLK files, the RFK files, UAP, UFO disclosure. Who knows what's next? Is there an element of us as American citizens and global citizens and humanity? Is there an act of forgiveness that's necessary in order to step into the new story? For all the wrong that's been done, for all the lies that have been told.
One of the main pillars of the old story, the narratives, the mythology that have defined the human story, the human world, is the cycle of vengeance. It's the categorizing of the world into the good guys and the bad guys, and the idea that good will triumph when the good guys defeat the bad guys. Well, forgiveness is a release of that story. it's holding something higher than getting revenge or being proven right or getting the upper hand or seeing your enemies suffer. I mean, even on a like really subtle level, this desire that those who you judge, maybe with very good reason, as horrible, wrong people, that they suffer. This secret glee when they're getting their just desserts. That stance feeds the cycle.
Yeah.
And at some point, and this happens in personal relationships too, at some point you have to decide, am I going to be right or am I going to be happy? Am I going to uphold victory over my opponent or healing, even if they get away scot-free with everything that they did? If the result is better for me, for my children, for the people around us, will I accept that? So I do think that there's an opportunity to let go. This is part of the letting go, more generally, of our old certainties and beliefs, because these opening up of the UAP and the JFK files and all this kind of stuff. I mean, once they flip the lid on that Pandora's box, who knows what is coming out?
Yeah.
Who knows what they've been hiding and suppressing?
You do. And I want to flip it back to you because, listen, you had the read on the coronavirus from April 2020. I just want to acknowledge that. Now they're opening up the Pandora's box on COVID. A lot of the suspicions that you had turned out to be true. So I'm gonna give it back to you. Is there a little bit of a glee? Is there a little bit of a gotcha or what? How do you move forward? Because you went through so much to tell a simple truth or something maybe that you believe to be true, and now here it is. It's coming out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, a lot of people still don't accept that the virus was engineered in a lab, or that the vaccines did great harm, or that there were other natural and generic ways to treat the disease, or that the masks were useless, or any of this kind of stuff. A lot of people still don't accept that, because beliefs are part of an identity and part of a sense of belonging. So it's really hard to change beliefs when your feeling of value and worth and even who you are is wrapped up in those beliefs, and your acceptance in a group, And that was really the dynamic that I pointed to during COVID, that this operation of in-group, out-group dynamics, and the display of tokens like a mask, and the behaviors like social distancing that identified you as a moral person, a good person, an acceptable person. So this is another aspect of the othering, the separation that runs our civilization. We're always dividing, creating artificial divisions.
Right.
So, yeah. Now, I definitely have my suspicions and good reason to think, that certain things will be revealed or could be revealed. I don't know if they will be. I mean, just because they say they're going to open up the JFK files, they've had how many decades now to purge them of anything really shocking?
Yeah.
How are we going to know?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and the UAPs. But I have many data points that suggest to me that the things that they've been suppressing, is again, like, it's not necessarily a group of bad people. That's a part of the same mentality. Find the virus and kill it. Find the bad thing and remove it. Find the enemy. like that mentality is it collapses a complex situation into a simple narrative, and it leaves a lot out. So when I say they, I'm speaking more of a system, an ideology that sweeps people up in it. But what they have suppressed from healing and curing cancer and human potential and alternative technologies of energy and transportation and material science and agriculture, what they have suppressed is so potent and so outside of what we accept as real that it's very hard for people to even take it in. But it would transform the world. And all of the problems that we face that are completely hopeless become solvable. Yes. But a lot of rational people succumb to despair because, you look at, not only the stuff that everybody knows about, but the PFAS, the forever chemicals, the PFAs, that are just like starting to permeate the entire environment. These have barely begun to exert their noxious effects. Or I just learned about naval munitions that when they're done with these ships and bombs, whatever, they just sink them, and now they're starting to corrode and they're starting to leak their contents. Explosives, like all these really intense chemicals, radioactive waste, all kinds of stuff. That
waste. Yes.
Oh my God. And it's not just like, here's a little bit more to the burden that the oceans are carrying. It's like as bad as everything else put together. We're talking like vast ocean death, like there's so many things like that right now that when people start to apprehend the magnitude of the crisis, they succumb to despair because they're not also apprehending the potency of technologies that can heal.
Yeah. So that's where I'm going. When we drag the lake and we find it's full of bodies and lies and forever chemicals and microplastics, and we come to that moment of utter despair, what is the mechanism to allow us to shift into the new story? We got to reveal it to heal it. This is something I actually believe in on an individual level. So this is a part of the revealing. But I believe there's, the new story, there has to be a way for us collectively to acknowledge that we're moving into the new story. My offering was that it's forgiveness. I'm wondering if there's more to it.
For me, it's always important to understand that a belief is connected to a state of being, and that there's this narrative about how negative beliefs, victim consciousness, et cetera, generates the realities that confirm those beliefs, generates the experiences that confirm that you're a victim. And there may be some truth to that, but it's also true that our beliefs themselves are a response to the things that have happened to us. And if you have negativity, as it's called, maybe that is like the dressing on a wound. And when you peel back that dressing, you got to attend to the wound. You can't just peel it back and ignore the wound. You're going to get hurt again. This is another part of the old story, the war against the self. Going to root out the bad things in me. Going to apply more force to make myself a better person. And there are those moments, where, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to get motivated, right? I'm not discounting those, but we have to be honest with ourselves too. And so this change of narrative, this change of belief has to go along with a deeper change in ourselves that usually involves healing and maybe involves grief, maybe involves passing some kind of initiatory threshold. A lot of the work that you're doing in Sacred Sons can help people, help men especially,
yes,
to to enter into a state of being where the new beliefs can actually fit, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not so much a how-to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's deep work. Yeah.
Yeah. In my understanding of it all, because I'm with you, it's like there's the individual healing and then there's the collective embodiment. My hope is that men do the individual work just so that they make better choices. And at some point, those men will be of a certain, in a certain place of decision making or power, and choose differently. Choose not to lie. Choose not to hide. Choose not to run, but choose to stand with. Choose to face it. Choose to be in service. That's my belief. That's my hope.
Yeah,
is that we will collectively make better choices, and really the choice is to be honest. The choice is to say, is this helping or is this harming us?
yeah. I ran a program a year or two ago called the Sanity Project. That was ultimately it's about honesty, starting with being honest with yourself. What's real? Because what's happening today is that we occupy a very narrow spectrum of consciousness that excludes a lot of the most terrible things and a lot of the most beautiful things in life, a lot of the most hopeful things and a lot of the most dreadful things. And we proceed with normalcy that doesn't make sense if we bring in actually everything that's real, that are, the genocide and the misery and the ecocide on the one hand, and the far out technologies of healing and transformation on the other hand. We pretend that those don't exist and we stay in normal. So honesty, basically, and even personal experiences, we wall those out. Yeah. So sanity means to be in reality. And that's really the same as honesty. It's saying, yeah, that happened. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I know this. And not sequestering that because it's not convenient, because it doesn't fit into the belief system that you operate, that doesn't fit into the one that society enforces. So I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen. Pretend
or because maybe we feel inadequate because we don't have a solution or because we don't know what to do about it.
Right. So let's pretend that's not happening. But I think that when we bring in all of that excluded information, it ignites a process that maybe at the outset you don't know what to do about it, but after you go through that process, you gain new clarity and new powers and new motivation, and you know what to do because you're operating from a full data set now. And it's not just mental knowledge, right? It takes a physical process, an embodied process, a relational process to integrate all that information. And right now it's a lot of new information is being presented, yes. and people, they'll ward it off with by explaining it away. It's happening in politics where, there's Trump the hero and Trump the villain. And both of those narratives leave out a lot. I just published an essay like an hour ago on this.
Yeah. I mean, you have direct involvement, just to bring it to your story, where you were a political advisor to RFK that maybe didn't go the way you had hoped, or, I read your Substack piece around that and your exit. But seeing RFK go to the Trump administration, it's like we had a lot of hope for making America healthy. And now we find ourselves confused again. And maybe a little bit of betrayal. Is that possible?
Yeah. And people want to make sense of it,
Right.
So there are ready-made narratives produced by the left and the right media. None of those cover it. None of all those narratives can only be maintained by keeping out key data points. So, for example, with the essay I just wrote, I think the title is something like "Greatness After the Bulldozer." So I'm like, Trump has taken a bulldozer to American politics, destroying all kinds of institutions. And I said, those who understand the profound corruption of those institutions are tempted to cheer. But before you cheer too loudly, better ask, what is going to be built from the wreckage? Well, that depends on the consciousness of the builders, their values and their allegiances. Is it going to be built from compassion? Is it going to be built from an understanding that what I do to the world, I do to myself? Yes. An understanding that my well-being depends on the well-being of other people, of ecosystems, of other nations, and that if we build from a place of I win, you lose, winning, winning, winning,
that's the old story.
Others, that's the old story, and it doesn't work. What we do to the other always comes back. If you visit violence on another nation, then you're going to experience domestic violence. The violence comes back under the fortress walls. You're going to have civil violence and domestic violence and inner violence, violence towards ourselves, addiction, depression. You cannot keep it out. No wall is high enough to keep that out. If you destroy ecosystems and lay waste to nature, then you will lay waste to society too, and to your own psyche. It's inescapable. So you can't make America healthy again at the expense of a world that we are interconnected on a fundamental level with. So that's the message I want to bring. To validate, like the institutions are so corrupt, and what is going to be revealed if they go all the way in revealing it is so shocking that people can barely even comprehend it. Like, that's true, but if you come into it without compassion, like for migrants, for example, now they're demonized. Well, you talk to an actual migrant and you hear their story that humanizes them and why they risked everything to move to a new land,
right?
Then none of those stories that the right purveys about the migrants make sense anymore. And hopefully you're left in a state of confusion. Confusion is good right now. We got to be able to stay longer in confusion.
Say more about that, because my feeling here is more information is actually not helping. We've been in this age of information, and it's an incessant buzzing at this point. And I like what you're saying. Actually, what's needed is more compassion.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just a basic truth. The basic truth is you are equally a child of God. You are a full soul who can suffer and experience joy and is equal in the eyes of God. I mean, maybe, we have different gifts, different skills, different fortunes. Some of us are much more fortunate than others. Some of us are more talented than others. But our fundamental worth is the same. That understanding must pervade all of our political action. Otherwise, what we will build will be even uglier than what is being bulldozed right now. Because it's a basic truth. This comes down to honesty again.
Yes.
You hear the story of that migrant or that whatever, that trans person or whoever it is that your ideology condemns, that Monsanto executive, that rural right-wing white person, whoever you condemn, that inner city teenager in a gang, whoever you condemn, you actually connect with that person. You do this all the time in your programs.
All the time.
All the time. And you realize, if not for the grace of God, that person is me. We are the same. That understanding, that is the revolution. The revolution isn't to drain the swamp and sweep out the bad guys. That's very superficial. The revolution is to understand this fundamental principle and then to enact it in, like you were saying, in all of our choices. That's the only revolution. Otherwise, we're just going to get another version of the same thing again and again and again.
Yes, that is my direct experience. I'm a big proponent that this work of healing is for all men. And the moment one person starts sharing their stories, what happened to them, there's a resonant frequency that happens where it brings that awareness like, wow, if I was born in those same circumstances, I might have had that same experience. I might have made those same choices. So therefore, can I have compassion for both the victim and the victimizer, the abuser and the abused? And that's a hard thing to accept. It's bordering on Christ consciousness. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because they are you. Because just what you said, whatever happens to them comes back onto us. I mean,
Right.
I believe that this is a universal truth. It's a part of this sacred reciprocity in some way.
Yeah, it's the universal truth. And so when you're honest, that means that you recognize that truth. Otherwise, you're in delusion. And it's true among nations as well. What the United States does to other nations is going to come back because we're all connected.
Yes. And so one of the driving factors in the things that we do as individuals or as a nation is this idea of scarcity, that I don't have enough, I need to have more. And, there's a real sentiment about takers and leavers. And gosh, I love America. I love Americana. I just watched the Super Bowl. Like, I'm here for it. I love the 4th of July. I love America. I want us to thrive. And we are takers. We are warmongers. This idea of scarcity is a cancer on our society. Can you shed some light on how you feel the perspective can shift so that we understand? I'm asking you to make sense of it, even though you don't want to, but I think you got some codes here. How can we shift our scarcity mindset collectively?
Well, we have created artificial scarcity. We've created an experience of scarcity. And we've done that by squandering the fundamental abundance that is available to us. The artificial scarcity is in things that are actually abundant. Things like companionship, touch, intimacy, beauty, song. Everybody used to sing. Even when I was a kid, we would sing on the school bus. We were producers of song, not consumers of it.
Yes.
Silence, darkness, time, and then water, the most abundant substance on earth, has become artificially scarce. Food. The world produces enough food, wastes enough food to feed all of the world's hungry many times over. But it's artificially scarce because of the way that we share it and don't share it. Land. Did I mention touch?
Mm-hmm.
So when these basic needs are not met, especially for intimacy and authentic communication and touch, then we're hungry. We're hungry for those things that have been taken away from us. Adventure. It's another artificial scarcity, Everything's all around safety.
How about rest? How about rest as in abundance? Like we don't even afford ourselves the luxury to rest, to take time.
Rest.
Like food, movement, touch, breath, rest. These are the basic fundamentals for our somatic systems.
Yeah, and when people have an abundance of those things, then they're not so greedy anymore. They're not so hungry for the substitutes for those things.
Right.
So I just mentioned adventure. If you have opportunities to push your boundaries, to explore new territory, then you're not going to, be subject to gambling addiction, or if your need for intimacy is met deeply, you're not going to be susceptible to porn addiction.
Right.
If your need for companionship is met and you're not lonely, then you're not going to be so addicted to social media, and you're not going to need to consume so much. If you're surrounded by objects that were made for you by people who know you and love you, then you're not going to want to buy a whole bunch of mass-produced stuff. And so, so the thing about this takers and leavers narrative, and it gets back into the war against the self. We're bad,
right?
And we've got this bad thing called greed, But I like to look at it with compassion and say, okay, what is it that makes somebody greedy? What are they missing?
A lack.
What are they lacking? When they are seeking money, well, it's a substitute for security. And where does genuine security come from? It comes from being in a family, an extended family, a community that loves you. And you know that they will take care of you because you've taken care of them. And that's what you've seen your whole life. Everybody taking care of each other. Then you don't need money. You already have what money is a substitute for, or power. It maybe is a substitute for self-respect. And where does that come from? So when I see a greedy person, I see a hungry person. I see a malnourished person. And this is simply, we call that compassion. But compassion isn't some indulgence that, I'm better than you, but I'll make allowances for you because you're still in kindergarten. Compassion is simply the truth. It's simply, if that were me, if I were deprived in those ways of intimacy and touch and security, then I would be greedy too. We're the same. I don't know. I cannot say that I'm made of better stuff than you and I would choose differently if I were in your circumstances. This is simply honesty. It's not, something that you can pursue like humility, and compassion. This is simply the result of seeing with clear eyes the way of the world. And that's why it all starts, and that's what I call sanity. You've been calling it honesty. That's where it all begins. And in the work that you do with Sacred Sons that I've witnessed and experienced, like you put down the veils of judgment, the distortions, and you really see a brother for how he is. And love is born almost unstoppably. It's
so natural. It's our natural state of being.
Yeah.
It truly is, when we remove those layers of judgment and we enter into an agreement of acceptance. And in the men's work, we call them agreements because that's the mechanism for how to get into that state of let's call it oneness or togetherness or brotherhood. And I have to say, for all of the good work that we do and that I witnessed and that you experienced, there's also a shadow side of brotherhood, and it's called betrayal. It's the story as old as Cain and Abel. And if you come from another particular background in the Islamic faith, it's called Habil and Kabil. There's the story of Mufasa.
Guys, I think, are they?
Yes, the story of Mufasa and Scar. I just saw this movie. It's a story as old as time where two brothers, they start out with this unconditional seeing of each other. Like, you fucking see me and I see you and I got you because of that. But then something happens and one betrays the other. And that is the part that I'm now faced with. How, and it's not for me to figure it out, but it's to actually feel the betrayal, feel the pain, the loss of a brother. Yeah. This is something that, this is now I just want to pass that ball to you.
I mean, in a way, like everything that is happening on earth is betrayal. because we're all brothers and sisters. Like just to take the example of Palestine, uh, the Jews and the Arabs are closely related.
Cousins.
They're all Semites. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They are, in a genetic sense, they are literally brothers.
Right.
And just to expand the picture a bit, even the most genetically unconnected humans on Earth, I don't know, Scandinavians and Kalahari Bushmen, still we share 99.9% of our DNA. Like, so every drama of murder and oppression and exploitation on Earth is a betrayal of that happens when we forget who we really are. Mm-hmm. But I think also, this is also the journey of separation, the journey of individuation on a kind of a more metaphysical level. It's part of the story. Betrayal is an essential part of the theatrical production that we are all.
What is its function? What is the usefulness of it?
Well, you learn something about who you are that you would not otherwise be able to learn. And you develop the capacity to forgive and to play out the story of return, the story of reconciliation, the story of forgiveness. Those are beautiful stories. And maybe if I were the playwright, I would set things up this way. Because I want to see that story. I want to see that drama. And there's so many different plot lines. There's the plot line of the false reconciliation, the wishful thinking reconciliation, the repeated betrayal. But I think that on some level, we can all recognize that the transition to the next possible age of humanity requires forgiveness, requires reconciliation. Because right now we're devoting most of our energy toward protecting ourselves from each other.
Yes.
We're expending most of our energy in division and conflict. None of the problems on Earth are hard to solve. But the solutions are also remotely, they're just unrealistic now because we are not cooperating to solve them. If we devoted, what's the world spend on military budgets every year? $4 trillion or something?
Yeah, of which they can't account for like $1 trillion of it.
But what if all that money, which represents tremendous scientific effort, represents the energies of the most dynamic, brightest young men, the most brilliant scientists, and the idealism that gets channeled towards military service? What if all of that was devoted toward, ecological healing,
right?
Or resolving poverty or whatever other thing? Like, these problems are easy to solve. Easy. The technical solutions are right there.
Yeah, and what we're speaking to here is that the solutions are actually non-materialistic. The solutions are not actually economic. They're in the hearts of men and women, and it's in the actions.
Well, they are economic and they are technical, but they're only available when there's a change in interchange.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so with that, and with this talk on scarcity, I got a lot of brothers in my community on the Bitcoin train. I'm, as someone who has written the book Sacred Economics, do you think Bitcoin is a part of or a solution to some of our challenges? I have a lot of believers probably listening to this podcast that are like, Bitcoin is the way. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I really appreciate Bitcoin. Its most powerful impact was that it awakened people to the knowledge that money is not just something set in stone, that we can reinvent money. That in my book, I said money is a story. Money is a system of agreements to assign value to symbols. And those agreements have been held for a long time by certain political authorities and encoded with those authorities' self-interest. So when money is created by a central bank, then that encodes certain values and powers that keep things going the way that they are. So Bitcoin comes along and says, no, actually, we can create our own money, and we can imbue it with other values and other power dynamics. So one of those values with Bitcoin is decentralization.
Right.
Now, it still encodes values, though, that like a lot of each next step that we take is a step away from the old story, but it still usually encodes a lot of assumptions and a lot of values and a lot of consciousness from the old story. This is not a one and done transition that we're in. So Bitcoin, has certain design characteristics that reflect scarcity. In fact, it's created to be artificially scarce. The supply is limited, and you have to work harder and harder and harder to get each new Bitcoin. And I'm aware that there are arguments that say the ecological cost of Bitcoin really isn't as high, and grid balancing and all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to spend time rebutting those arguments. I think that they are self-serving. But I don't want to. So this is like this temptation. Oh, do you endorse it or do you condemn it? Things aren't that simple. Same with Trump.
Right.
But Bitcoin, encourages hoarding and not flow. It has some of the same deficiencies that gold, upon which it is modeled, have. And the political process that, so theoretically, doesn't really necessarily work this way, but theoretically, a central bank is a listening organ that senses the amount of money needed by the economy and then alters the money supply in accordance with that. That's what it's supposed to do. And I think that one of the deficiencies of Bitcoin is that there is no feedback mechanism where the money supply is regulated according to the needs of the economy. And then there's other problems too. I don't want to get too much into the minutia, of the Lightning Network and transactions and all, but
right.
There are ways to design. I think that some of the second and third generation digital currencies have made some improvements, and there are design features that I've even thought about starting one, a crypto.
You got a coin, an Eisenstein coin coming?
Well, the thing I want to put into it is negative interest, built-in negative interest as an anti-hoarding measure. So that, if you hodl your currency for too long, it just gradually evaporates.
Oh, interesting. You got to keep the currency moving.
Right. Just like wealth in traditional societies, where there was a carrying cost, your grain would rot in the granary if you kept it too long.
Neat.
Or if you were nomadic, possessions were a literal burden. Or if you were a hunter and you killed a woolly mammoth, or an elephant.
Got to share it. You got to feed the whole village.
Right.
Yeah.
I store my meat in the belly of my brother was one of the quotes I got from an indigenous person describing why they didn't store food. He kills an elk or a dreaker or whatever, a warthog, and he throws a big feast. And he could smoke it and preserve it, but he doesn't do that. He shares it far and wide. Why? Well, I don't want to make this too transactional. He probably loves and has, connections with these people. But also, on some level, he knows that he's going to be invited to every feast in the future. I store my meat in the belly of my brother. And why is that? Because the meat decays. It's very hard to store it and carry it around with you. It's rational to share it. And so those societies have tremendous abundance, not the artificial scarcity of money that we have today.
Right.
What we call fiat currency is artificially scarce because it is created through interest-bearing debt. Bitcoin is also artificially scarce for a different reason, but it doesn't have to be that way. So if money has a built-in decay rate, it promotes flow, it promotes sharing, just like the meat in a hunter-gatherer society, and we have totally different social dynamics. You can still get rich, if you are offering great value to society and you're a competent entrepreneur, and you're inventing great stuff, and you can still get rich, but you cannot get richer merely because you're already rich.
Right. This is coming back to the natural law of entropy. Does that feel accurate?
I call it the law of return.
Law of return.
Everything in nature, everything decays and becomes food for something else. It's cyclical.
Yeah. I store my meat in the belly of my brother.
Yeah.
That for me really lands. And you know what it also brings up is that the abundance of adventure, it means we will hunt again. It means we will go back out and we will hunt another day. And there's something that is healthy for our mindset, not to say that we've arrived, but to say that we will hunt another day together. Right. I think that's a healthy part of the story, to keep working towards a new day.
Yes.
That's really powerful. Where was that hunter from that told you that?
I used that quote in Sacred Economics.
Yeah.
Which I wrote in 2009, 2010. So I'm trying to remember.
That's all right.
I think it was might have been a Paraha hunter. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, we need more of that mentality. And you're right,
it's still true today, in a way. Yeah. We could be facing a profound economic collapse, financial collapse, that will dwarf what happened.
Certainly feels like it's coming.
Yeah.
It feels like it.
And if that happens, what investment is safe? Stocks, bonds, bank accounts, sacks of gold bars? No, none of that is safe. Not even the gold bars. In fact, if you have a walled compound with lots of gold bars, that's an advertisement for men with guns to come and take your gold.
That's right.
That's what will happen if things break down to that point. There's going to be people with bigger guns than you. It's called the government, okay? And they're going to come and take your gold. So what is actually secure? What is actually secure is what you have given to others. Mm-hmm. The gratitude that you have generated, the connections you have made. Because then people will take care of you too. That's a bank account that fires cannot burn and thieves cannot steal.
I know.
Doesn't matter.
Can we create a currency that's based in positive energy, and the amount of love and positivity that you put out is returned, in some form of...
Well, yeah. It's a problem to try to measure these things, to quantify them. You get into trouble that way. But fundamentally, that's what money kind of could be or wants to be. It's a way to help keep track of who has been generous. That's actually how money started, or one of the tributaries to money. It was, you donate to the temple granary, and you get receipts, to acknowledge your contribution, and then at some point you could, give these receipts later to get grain out of the granary. So then they became currency. Coins were not the earliest money by any means. These temple granary receipts predate them by thousands of years. But just to say, money should be a way to help us keep track. And in some way it is, if you produce a lot of value, you get a lot of money, and that says I've contributed a lot to society. There is a valid, I'm not anti-money.
Right.
But when we quantify too much, when we start to quantify love and intimacy, it devalues those things. We recognize that certain intimate functions should not be monetized.
Yeah. Like when you asked this question, what investment is safe? The first thing that came to my mind was the love I have for my children, the time I spend with them, the connection I have to my wife. Because even if the world is crumbling, I imagine that there's still moments of laughter. Like there's still moments where we get to be in connection, which really can't be bought or sold.
Yeah, and there's that's a kind of abundance, like playing. My youngest is now 12. We play, we laugh, we make games. Like all we need is one ball. We can have fun for an hour, laughter. It doesn't cost any money. It's always available. That's abundance.
Yes.
And financial collapse isn't going to affect that.
Yeah. And I have younger kids. My oldest is 10 and my daughter's 1, and I have 4 kids. So, since I first met you, I think I had 2 more. So,
wow.
And we're done. The whole thank you. The whole tribe is here. We're all Earthside. I'm closing up the portal. I believe eventually I will get the sacred snip, but there is some truth to that. It's the best part of my day. When I'm putting my son to bed at night, and before we go to bed, we're typically wrestling. Like my son Holland, who's 5, he's jumping off the couch and landing on me, and we're really getting that roughhousing in, and it sets up our night routine. And we're in bed, and there's just nothing else that's more important. And typically, I feel like when kids are going to bed is when they're actually the most vocal. That's when they'll tell me about their day or tell me something that happened. And oh my gosh, there is just nothing sweeter, And so really, really, what investment is safe? It's the investment into our relationships. And as a father, there's a real demand on us as men to provide. And so when uncertainty is present, our usefulness comes into question. When Bitcoin tanks, and I'll just be real, many men have taken their lives. I've known a person who's taken their lives when they lost their investment.
Yeah.
And that's a really sad thing because of the impact that's left in the wake of placing too much value on external things that we can't control.
I like to quote my ex-wife, Patsy. One of her sayings was, money isn't yours until you've spent it. She's from Taiwan, and kind of in the Chinese racial memory, there's quite an understanding that, everything can be taken from you by circumstances. But once you've spent it or given it away, then no one can take it from you. And what you buy with money can be taken away from you, but when you give it away, that act of generosity cannot be taken away from you. So to all those brothers who are hodling a lot of Bitcoin, maybe you want to spend that shit before it's too late. Give it away before it's too late. Put something good into the world. Like that money can do beautiful things, There are people in America, 59% of all families cannot raise $1,000 in the case of an emergency. There's a lot of people out there just, I'm not even talking about giving it away to charity. I'm talking about people in your friend circles and extended families, there's a lot of, and it's not easy, to give it in a clean way. But there's a lot of beautiful things you can do with all that Bitcoin, because what happens if it crashes? There's many reasons why it could. I don't see it happening soon, but who knows? Yeah. When there's a liquidity crisis and people start to cash in their crypto to meet other obligations, it's a it's like a positive feedback loop, and it can tank, that can happen to you. And maybe you should have cashed it in when it was at 100,000 and done good works with that, that will survive the crash.
I store my meat in the belly of my brother.
Yeah.
So just being here in this space of fatherhood, do you have any advice? You were mentioning your ex-partner. You've been one who has gone through challenge. When I first met you, you were in the midst of it. I remember you telling me a story about your 17-year-old spending some time with you and how meaningful that was. Mm-hmm. For some young fathers out there, maybe even for the men who are just stepping into fatherhood, what's some wisdom that you can glean from your own experience? And I know and I'm saying this from a place of it's not easy. Those precious moments of putting a child to sleep at night, they don't come for free. There's a lot of effort that's required to even be in that position. But what's something that
what's coming to me right now, first is to validate the choice of fatherhood. You'll get a lot more affirmation and celebration and prestige in society for not being an attentive father, but instead putting all your energy into your career. And I'm not saying to abandon a career for fatherhood. And a man's mission in the world is sacred. But also raising children in a good way is probably the best contribution that you can make to the future. And for one thing, we need more children in the world. We're facing a population crash in the next 100 years.
Right.
But especially children who are raised with the understanding of what a human being is for, which is to contribute to life, to contribute to beauty on this earth, to give and receive in full measure. Also to enjoy, to receive, to enjoy what life has to offer. That fully enjoying and receiving actually helps keep the planet alive. Just as you want to keep giving if your gifts are fully received with gratitude, same with Gaia, same with this earth. She wants her gifts to be fully received. And we do that through the senses and through fully receiving them, through enjoying what is offered. So to raise children with that dual understanding, you are here to give and you're here to receive. You are here to be part of things. Then we will have a beautiful world. The more men who impart those values through word and through deed to their children. And I'll also say that it is, as you said, very challenging to raise children outside of the village.
Yeah. To
be in that single family box, and like you talked about bedtime, but what if your 2-year-old wants you to read The Little Engine That Could 12 times in a row?
Dude, I'm listening to Baby Shark over and over and over.
Yeah. And here you are, with children have so many needs for attention and for play, and you cannot actually provide for all those needs. You're not supposed to provide for all those needs. You're supposed to meet some of those needs, but there's supposed to be aunts and uncles and cousins all over the place. I met a woman in India who grew up in a household of 100 people, including, all his extended family, servants and their families. I mean, babysitting was not a concept.
Yeah.
Play date was not a concept. You did not have to exert all of the effort that's required today to raise a child in a good way. So I just want to validate that it is freaking hard.
Yes.
And if you sometimes lose your patience, lose your temper, lose your positivity, that's not because you are inadequate or there's something wrong with you. It's because you're in freaking hard conditions. And so I want to extend that hand of comradeship and recognition, and the blessing that you may discover inner resources that carry you through those hard times, and that your knowledge that it isn't supposed to be this way will open up avenues to make a different society and build community and normalize children running around with each other and in mixed age groups and with, adults, many adults who love them, not just their parents. I wish that blessing for all of the young fathers listening.
Yeah. Even for myself, a lot of this work that I'm doing is an attempt to re-village in my own life. And one of my favorite things about the community I have in Sacred Sons is that my boys, they have these rad uncles, and it's not in the old way. We don't live 20 feet away. But my boys, we get to travel to places like where you're at in Costa Rica, or travel to Maui, and they know their Uncle Kale, when they're of a certain age, is going to take them out hunting. Just to have that awareness that there are others who can add to the life education for our children is huge.
Yeah.
And
it's not like a one step, all of a sudden we're in village again. But, even like a traditional extended family, it's like Italian immigrants, there are always people coming by. I mean, we can take steps.
Yes,
that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's in the way of some of those steps? An idea of safety. And we'll start to wrap it up here, but I think that's one of the challenges that I feel from folks when these hippies try to re-village once again. Not in the way, again, we're not going to all live together in the same house. No one wants that. And there's like this concern, like, is it going to be safe? Are my values going to be the same as their values? I love this concept that the children belong to no one and they belong to all of us. Mm-hmm. And there's some deep meaning in like the care and consideration that it takes to understand that all of the children on this planet, they belong. It's all of our responsibility, from the migrants to those in Gaza to those in Israel. There is a sense of responsibility to those children, and I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers, but I truly appreciate your perspectives. I appreciate your heart that you're bringing to this conversation. And I believe that these type of conversations are a part of what's necessary to get us into that new story.
Thank you, Adam. Really happy to have had this time with you. Hope we can intersect in person again.
We will. I've got some cool events coming up for this year. I've got something cooking in the background, more of a conference that I would love to invite you to speak at and to just be in the energy once again. Mm-hmm. And I'm on mission, as you know, and so I will be using my gifts to create more experiences for connection. And we've stepped into the space not only of men's work, but of men and women coming together. Mm-hmm. Last year we had this event, Remembrance. My kids were there, dogs were there, aunties, uncles, babies, elders. It was very significant for our community to call that in. And I'd love to bring you into that space as well and see what unfolds.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. With that, Charles, is there any final message, prayer, or song or poem that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are listening?
I mean, I think I said what I wanted to say in my last little speech. Maybe just to touch that point of recognition that came through as I was just speaking about, blessing the fathers, and to connect that with our earlier theme of compassion as the result of honesty, and to hold all these judgments lightly. That's what brotherhood is. Brotherhood is the medicine.
With that, Charles Eisenstein, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We are out, family. Much love, compassion, and peace.